Bonjour. Joyeux Halloween. I just want to start by registering a small complaint. If we were in the United States today, because it's Halloween, I would be looking out into the audience and you would be dressed as witches and vampires, and so you demure Europeans, I'm just a little bit disappointed. I'd love to call up my panelists to the stage. Come on up, because I know we're a little bit short on time, but please come on up and I'll introduce you. But as they're coming up, I think Sebastian is here. Oh, yay! I thought he was gonna ghost me. Here he is, Sebastian. I just want everybody to take a second before I introduce my amazing panelists to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and imagine that this stage is a time machine. And we're going to take ourselves back, way back in time, to the halcyon days of 2024. In 2024, I, and I'm sure many of you in this room, were at Climate Week in New York, and the mood was climate optimism. It was amazing. It was giddy. There were fantastic events, and it was an incredible time. And then in the US, if you can't tell from my accent and my terrible French, I'm from Washington, D.C. Then we had an election. And the mood around climate changed very quickly. The plastics treaty failed that same month. The negotiations failed. And we began a very different mode. We moved from climate action to energy dominance. We moved from a mode of inspiring clean and green energy to one of regulatory rollbacks. And we moved really from a mindset of climate first, America first, to climate last. And that's kind of where we find ourselves in the US right now. And what that means is we have to identify where the momentum is coming from and what backfills. And that's where my esteemed panelists come in today. So delighted to introduce Sebastian Justin from Air France, and Dion Binder, who is from the World Sustainable Hospitality Alliance. And you've met Ben already. He's a frequent contestant on this game show. Tim van Hotum, who is from the Dutch university that I will ask him to say. and you've all met Elke. So I'm so looking forward to this conversation, because it is an extraordinary moment. And I think we from 2 days of being at this session, I think we find ourselves in the interesting friction between adaptive optimism and constructive pessimism. So with that, I'd like to start with you, Tim. I'd like to you're doing extraordinary work, and I'd like to hear from you about how are you keeping that sense of optimism? How are you inspiring the next generation to move forward on sustainability?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me. I work at Wageningen University, very difficult to pronounce. But I would like to start to say I love traveling. I've been traveling in many places around the world with a lonely planet in my backpack. And well, one of the most beautiful places I've been was in Indonesia. I think it was almost 25 years ago. I was diving in Bunaken National Park. Well, if you see the coral reefs there, it's fantastic. But a few islands further, I was diving at the Gili Islands, and the coral reefs were totally destroyed by dynamite fishing. And if you look at, well, all the beautiful destinations I have seen, they're all threatened by climate change and impacted by climate change. And well, we know we are in a 1.3 degree warmer world. Climate change will increase, so we'll see much more impact all over the place. And even if we reach the Paris Agreement goals that we agreed on here in Paris, well, we have to deal with climate change. We were just talking about the importance of adaptation, really important. But all these alarming messages don't bring us into action. And I see a lot of people, also students at our university, that get depressed don't believe in the future anymore, don't believe that we can fix it anymore. So what is actually missing is a narrative of hope and action and a vision for the future we want, a long-term vision of how a sustainable future looks like. So I thought I will write a book about that, and that book is called The Only Planet.
Clever.
Because I think at the moment we all need a sort of survival guide for the 21st century. So this is the climate guide for the 21st century. It's about the urgency, the climate and biodiversity crisis. It's about solutions, because we have the solutions already. We know what we have to do. We know what we can do, what are the scalable solutions. We just heard a fantastic one. But what we also need is a vision, an inspiring vision of how a sustainable future looks like. And well, the absolutely good news, and that is what keeps me optimistic, is that 80 to 89% of the world population wants more climate action. People are really concerned about the future. And we sometimes forget that, but a lot of people in the world want governments and businesses to do much more about climate action. But people are also losing track on where we can start, what we need to do. So this book gives some insight in that. And I think the biggest challenge for the 21st century is that people are very much disconnected from nature. And I think the most important message also of this book is that nature is our best ally in the fight against climate change. So that's the most easy solution we have, is just not destroying nature, but helping nature, restoring it. And that's what we need to do. So we need to reconnect with nature.
I think that's so important, and I think the message of continuing to communicate optimism is critical. And if there are any media in the room, we do have a news flash. We're going to work on turning Tim's book into a play that's going to debut off-Broadway. So we'll be holding auditions in the coffee break room after this session, if anybody wants to audition. Thank you. Dion, I want to turn to you. Maybe I started with my pessimistic opening, but I am an optimist. But what is interesting to me is if world leaders, or certain world leaders and policy, aren't the forcing function around sustainability, what then backfills? What fills the gap, and how do we galvanize community, and what does that look like to really continue the critical work when we don't have that all-important sort of agenda setting coming from places that we need it to come from?
Good morning, afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Jessica, for the question. I must say I'm very happy to see such a prestigious audience in my hometown. So it's a really pleasure to be here today, and thank you, Christophe, for making it happen. So we all know that the industry is at the crossroads. I mean, we all know about increased regulatory pressure, exponential growth of the sector, climate hazards, rising expectations of the consumers. And what it takes is really radical collaboration. And it's radical collaboration between all stakeholders as a responsibility to the place first, which is a notion that is very important, especially in the tourism industry. So how do we actually do that? And that's the role of the World Sustainable Hospitality Alliance. Our mission is to create a prosperous and responsible industry that gives back more to the destination than what it takes. And the way we do that is by accelerating the path towards net positive, by convening industry leaders, by crafting collective actions, finding regenerative solutions, and harmonizing metrics in the industry. So one point I wanted to make is, like, at the end of the day, and to your point about the situation in Washington, the conversation is not about sustainability. The conversation is very much about common sense, about business resilience, about risk management. Sustainability is very controversial these days for good and bad reasons. Bad reasons, we know them. Good reasons is that, I mean, are we happy with sustainable? Is that what we're having? Is it good enough for us to be satisfied? So there's like a backlash against sustainability for very good reasons. But basically, just to put it into a context, and I'm sure you all have some figures in mind, but what's happening really is that on the one side, we have an exponential growth of the sector from 1.5 billion tourists to 30 billion by 2034. It means, how do we create 100 million more jobs in 10 years? How do we build 25 million more hotel rooms? I mean, that's a challenge. And at the same time, we have more tensions. We have tensions at the local level. The visitor to resident ratio is going to increase 50% in some location. There's a strain on natural resources. And mostly the industry is a very big contributor to CO2 emissions, to solid waste, to global energy. So I think we should be very mindful when we talk about sustainability. Then I just want to give you a few very concrete examples about how do we do that. And so the Alliance has been building coalitions and organizing consultations across the industry for many, many years. So basically the topics we work on are very much, come from the industry. It's not the Alliance who decides to work on anything. I'll give you two examples. One is about food. Why food? Well, the sector is 25% of global CO2 emissions. It has a huge impact on biodiversity loss. And the hospitality sector is very uniquely positioned to reshape the supply chain and to influence guest behavior. So what we did a few years ago, we basically started with the research. So we did a research with one of our members, Iberostar, with SMI, Sustainable Market Initiative, and a consultancy called Systemic, that basically showed that the global industry, global hospitality industry, can reduce food-related emissions by 30% by 2030, which is about 70 million tons. So this is huge. How do we do that? 62% comes from food sourcing, and about 17% from food waste, and actually maybe 2% from plastic. So what we did basically is like identifying solutions around, like in the ecosystem that could address this challenge. The startup that we're collaborating with, we know, is working with Iberostar and with Radisson, which is another of our members. With Iberostar, in 6 months only, thanks to this AI-powered food waste tracker, they managed to reduce their food waste by 28% and saving 1.5 million meals globally. Radisson, in the example in Bremen, in 2 years, they managed to reduce the food waste from 60% and saving 90,000 meals, that would have gone to landfills. Another solution in the food supply is Fresh on the Table, which is another company we work with that basically is a digital marketplace that connects farmers to hospitality for sustainable sourcing. The last example I want to give is about nature. Why nature? The hospitality relies for 80% of its goods and services on nature. And I'm not only talking about the rise of nature tourism, but really everything that is being done and operated in the industry is related to nature. So during COP15, the biodiversity COP, we took a commitment with WTTC and UN Tourism to halt and reverse biodiversity loss by 2030. So how has that been translated? We partnered in March 2025 with Ocean Shot. And Ocean Shot is basically looking at embedding nature-positive solutions in terms of ecosystem restoration, coral reef restoration, mangroves regeneration into destinations and hospitality operations. So what is interesting is that we see that the Alliance is not only looking at internal solutions for the industry, but really working with the ecosystem to create those cross-sector collaborations that are absolutely necessary. I haven't mentioned one organization that we very much work with in hospitality, which is Zero. But you're hearing a lot about Zero today. But I mean, the solution that you presented, Elke, has a tremendous potential for the hospitality industry. So we're very happy to also help accelerate, because that addresses the challenges we all face.
Thank you. So many important threads to pull there from, I love the idea of radical collaboration. I think that's incredible. But I think you also touched a little bit on sustainability fatigue, right? And certainly from the perspective of the US, the pressure's on for Europe as well as industry, because if we're not leading, I mean, we're not just backing away from sustainability, we're turning against it and weaponizing it in certain ways. But that's my pessimist lens. I'll switch back to optimist. Sebastian, Air France has been a real leader in sustainability with extraordinary commitments. And I want to sort of pull a little bit from you. What are you seeing in terms of industry guiding and leading industrial policy, industry out front, and what does that really mean when you're coming from an organization like yours?
Thanks, Jessica. Thanks for having me, and hi, everyone. Well, indeed, of course, as a group of airlines, we need to navigate through a paradox. Point one, this has been said, people love to travel and they want to keep traveling. We see that in all our trends, all around our network, and I think it's one of the major honor that we have to serve, that desire to visit family and relatives and so on. Nevertheless, we of course have an issue about the fact that we are a hard-to-abate industry, and we have today very limited options of highly disruptive technology, I would say innovation in the next years for civil aviation. So how do we lead and keep being pragmatic and try to show concrete proof of commitments and adaptation in this paradox? That's, I think, the main strategic topic that we have all from the bottom to the top of our organization, and also dialogue with shareholders. Maybe first to say that we start from our consumers. We are a B2C industry, also B2B for the repair of the airlines that we own or that we serve for third parties. And every type of sociology of travelers ask us, as an airline, what are you doing concretely? What are you doing as an industry? And what specifically are you doing as Air France KLM? Because our main assets, our people, our aircrafts, our hubs, are in Europe, and mostly in France and Netherlands today. So we have this pressure from our clients, and also the regulatory environment, which is, of course, one of the natural drivers of our adaptation actions. And this, I would say, this request from customers comes from every type of flows. Just to break some stereotypes, we have made a study for the French market, one of our strategic markets. 43% of the travelers are under the age of 35. So we also need to deal with young people question and I would say interrogations. More than 40% of our flows are for employees, not for extremely wealthy people and customers, despite, of course, some of the maybe forefront marketing advertisement or products. So we need to really to address all types of interrogations. And climate change is, of course, the emissions, CO2, but not only. And I will maybe bring some examples. On the first stream, so how do we cope and navigate this paradox for CO2 emissions? Well, first, as a listed company, we try, of course, to be the most serious in terms of science-based targets and certifications. We need to show that we are consistent, report and disclose every figure or concrete actions that we do. And well, it's very basic for a company, but also it's a real, I would say, effort that we are now, I think, navigating with a high level of professionalism. Point two, we try to, I would say, stream all our financial and non-financial strategy towards climate change. Just to give you one example, on the financial side, we invest around 2 billion euros capex per year on the renewal of our fleet. That means that every you know, airlines industry is a small margin industry for legacy carriers like us. So we invest every, I would say, margin that we have, every euro or dollar, to the new gens of our providers. So that's, I would say, a very assumed priority in terms of trying to rotate our assets. Of course, this drives 25% of CO2 consumption down and up to 50% of noise impact. That's also one climate change, I would say, effect that is very important in an industry. That's for the financial part. For the non-financial part, I think that first we, of course, try to be very cautious when we select SAF technologies and sourcing. Many technologies available, more to come. That's very interesting to hear. We are very committed into that. We are one of the main world leaders in terms of procurement of SAF. So this means that it's not only, I would say, choosing every type of technology. We are very committed to dialoguing with upstream and downstream of the value chain, regulators, also regulations, French-based, Dutch-based, EU-based. So very concrete, I would say, corporate, mindful and mindset every day all throughout the organization. And also maybe coming back to your pessimism or I don't know, or optimism matrix. Well, first of all, our DNA in terms of, as I said, the corporate culture, footprint, expectations from our employees and customers is really to provide mid-term and long-term visibility on concrete proof. And that's why, of course, we do it on our own. We also try to navigate through coalitions and alliances. This has been shared. This is very, very key for us. We try to, I would say, serve safe and reliable and comfortable service for our customers, but we also are embedded into hospitality industry, advertisement, industrial footprint for aeronautics. So we are really in the middle of the crossroads of all these topics. So that's why we work standalone and with others. So that's my point of optimism. I think that from our example, when we solve concrete interrogations with our partners, not only within the airline industry, but also elsewhere, we are more concrete toward customers, employees, and also public opinion. And that's why I try to show it today a bit, but we are still a lot of challenges to drive, notably, and that's maybe my final point on your interrogation, on the international global level playing field. You've talked about the position of many countries. Of course, we are a worldwide industry, little barriers. We need also to have carbon diplomacy at the multilateral level. And maybe just stopping here to also hear your thoughts maybe on that. I think it's one of the key topics. Is Europe and other countries able, we're talking about COP, it's going to Belém in a few days, are we collectively able to also tackle this type of industries to have common standards?
I don't envy your stakeholder mapping. You really have an extraordinary amount of considerations as you're thinking about the sustainability imperative from your customers to your employees. And as an airline, literally the entire world is watching, right? So that's quite a feat. So it's terrific to hear you talk about the dedication there. I want to turn very quickly to Elke, because we talked about SAF and we talked about innovation. And Elke, I'm struck by the alchemy that your company is doing. If we could all turn waste, there's another word I want to use that starts with an S, but I won't. If we could all turn waste into gold, it would be an extraordinary world. Going back to that 2024 Climate Week, I remember hearing Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson say that we already have all the solutions we need, but they're just not, to paraphrase, they're just not evenly distributed yet. Do you believe that's true?
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. The technology to decarbonize is here. It's all around us. It just needs support. Yeah, in the last 5 years, I've been to so many of these events all over the world, and they've been displayed, those solutions, and it really is time to step up because, this week, what's been going on in the Caribbean? This is just going to increase, and we need to find solutions. We need to support the solutions that are going to help reduce the impact that is happening around the world. And we need to work together.
It is a dramatic moment of transformation. And Ben,
Yeah.
I want to turn to you because how do we create mechanisms and consumer demand signals, in a way that they can be interpreted by both industry, consumers, and regulators? And I know that your organization has done an extraordinary job of starting to create some of these frameworks. And we only have a couple minutes, so
Yeah, thanks, Jessica.
lightning round.
So, I mean, I would just want to kind of agree with you, Elke, in the sense that, like, we hear a lot, don't we? We go to a lot of conferences where we talk a lot about sustainability, and then you get the sense that this huge juggernaut of an industry is getting bigger and maybe a bit badder. And so that's kind of like, now we need to get to the hope bit. And the hope bit, I think, is these big ideas that are actually going to nudge the industry where it needs to go. And I think, Elke, yours is one of those big ideas. If we can get behind alternative fuels, that's definitely one of the solutions. At the Travel Foundation, we've put out some other big ideas. We've been consulting on them over the last few months. And we will reiterate them soon at COP. But basically, it's around having a global risk register so that everyone can actually understand together what the issues are, and therefore that will naturally, hopefully, align people towards the solutions. Pulling together climate finance actually for tourism transition. There's a lot of climate finance that does go into some of these destinations that we're talking about, but it doesn't go through tourism at the moment. And so we think that that's a real missed opportunity to help, to help transition from some of these unviable tourism types to others. That needs support for the workforce, so there needs to be a big idea around that too. And the last one is just around making sure that every place where we develop tourism, one way or another, grow it, change it, do we know that we have a social license to do that? Like, can we be sure that the place is actually welcoming this? And I think that that is one kind of balance that we all need to be sure that we're doing this right. Trust in the residents.
I love that and look forward to hearing more. All right, we have to wrap up, but I'm going to ask us all again to close our eyes very briefly, and we're in a time machine, and we're sitting on this stage, and it's 2050. I've come up, of course, the hall in a pushchair. But if you were to say the one thing that is the absolute imperative that we have accomplished by 2050, and very briefly, Sebastian.
Very short, easy. My personal view is I still want people be able to visit their family, friends, and relatives all around the world using airplanes if they want, but with, I would say, a planet that is still able to cope with all this network and travel options.
I love that. Dion.
Place-based regeneration. And building up on what Ben was saying, the social license to operate. And at the end of the day, if we do this right as an industry, if we go on this, engage on this net positive pathway, we want local residents and local communities be happy about our presence.
Happiness.
And it's about having the humility to know that we are guests and making sure that it works for everyone.
Ben.
I'll second that.
Okay. Tim.
Well, then we feel connected to nature again, and we have nature and restored nature all over the place again. In our cities, in our food system, we have a society that is in balance with nature again.
Lovely. Elke.
Absolutely. I second that too. So I see in the future we're going to have airports with terminals with different energy sources, from SAF to hydrogen to electricity, but it's going to be the power sources. Those are going to become the terminals, and we're going to be part of that in the whole SAF department. Which
I love it.
Because I just want to make one thing very clear. Right now, today, okay, there is only 0.7% of SAF being in the global fuel, jet fuel mix.
Good.
So we need to ramp it up, and pretty quick.
Thank you. And speaking of wrapping it up pretty quickly, I'm going to end this panel, first of all, thanking my guests for their speed. And Jane Goodall, because we talked about nature and the importance of nature, who just died. I listened to, I think it was the last interview she recorded before her death, and this is sort of what Aziz was saying, but Jane Goodall says that hope is a verb with its sleeves rolled up. So I leave us with that. Thank you.